Hello, and thank you for joining us this evening. This is Man of Many Faces, a conversation with John Lithgow. I'm Dominic Patton, the senior editor and chief TV critic for Deadline Hollywood, and it is my distinct pleasure to be your host tonight on behalf of the Television Academy. Now, if you permit me, I'd like to take a moment just before we start to thank the Television Academy Activities Committee, as well as the event production and marketing staff that brought this event together today. Now, let's get to the main event. Obviously, we are delighted to have six-time Emmy winner and the man who brought us Dick Solomon, Winston Churchill, and Depression-era Hollywood attorney E.B. Jonathan, among many other characters, to the small screen with us. Now, we all know John from his performances on NBC's Third Rock from the Sun for 6 seasons, the first season of Netflix The Crown, and the inaugural season of HBO's Perry Mason. Not to mention stints on Dexter, How I Met Your Mother, and a trio of appearances hosting Saturday Night Live, as well as his 2-time Oscar-nominated film work, his duo of Tonys for his stage work in The Changing Room and The Sweet Smell of Success, and other acclaimed stage work like Hillary and Clinton. But you might not know him from his accomplishments as a Harvard graduate and a Fulbright scholar at the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts, and I say this as a parent of a young child, a charming career for the little folks, penning children's books and putting out albums for children. So please allow me to introduce a scholar, a thespian, and a gentleman, Mr. John Lithgow.
Thank you, Dominic.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Very, very nice introduction. I'll try to live up to it.
I will. That's going to be probably the best I do all night. Now, I want to ask you, you come from a family with a theater background.
Oh, yes.
Your father specifically. And you did a lot of stage work at a very young age, a lot of Shakespeare. Mm-hmm. So was a television, Broadway, and film career part of the plan?
Yeah, absolutely not. My father was quite unique. He was an American, a Midwestern producer of Shakespeare festivals. And that was the world I grew up in. I think I was in about 20 Shakespeare plays before I was 20 years old, but always in little roles.
What was your favorite of all the plays you were in?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. I suppose the comedies, the Shakespearean comedies. But I was like a kid actor or a bit part actor. I was a spear carrier and a soldier. I played roles like Pinch, Nym, Froth, all the one-syllable sort of journeyman character parts until I got to Guildenstern and Hortensio, And it was outdoors with no amplification, so it was virtually yelling Shakespeare.
Is this why, I know I've heard you say this in past interviews, you sometimes talk when you get on set in front of a camera, and you'll say to a director, okay, here's how the first take's gonna go. Yeah. I'm gonna really blow off your wigs, and then I'll bring it down a bit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I know it's gonna happen anyway. They're gonna tell me to take it down. So why not make a compact with the director right up front? I'll give you way too much.
Way too much.
Then take it down. And so, who knows, when you get into the editing room, you may like that.
I'm sure they do, many of them.
Which is why I end up yelling even in movies.
It's interesting, because I've often thought of your career as, and it's interesting you bring up the Shakespeare part of it, as very much like British actors. It's like a Laurence Olivier or a Richard Burton or many of those actors, even up to today with Patrick Stewart and others like that, which is they do a bit of everything. And sometimes American actors generally stay in one or two lanes pretty clearly. I want to read something out to you because this is fascinating to me. You have acted alongside, or one could say they've acted alongside you, the likes of Meryl Streep on 3 occasions, Catherine O'Hara, Lawrence Fishburne, Robin Williams, Sylvester Stallone, Laurie Metcalf, John Travolta, Selma Hayek, Denzel Washington, Jane Curtin, Michael C. Hall, Claire Foy, Matthew Rhys, and Charlize Theron, as well as, you did a pretty good Donald Trump at one point too. What has been the thing that you find you learn the most from the people you work with?
I think you always absorb something and take it with you. What I bring is a sort of theatrical excess. I love working with far subtler film actors, particularly in film, where the camera is so close, and you can do so much of the best work you do is unconscious and accidental, and really good. I had an incredible time working with Matthew Rhys, for example, most recently, because he's just so muted. There's so little, so that when he catches fire, it's so startling. I pay a lot of attention to the actors I work with because I don't think I've stopped learning, even though I've done an awful lot of acting.
But to that, especially in your TV work, because TV is so intense, I mean, even when you're doing premium cable shows and what have you, do you like to rehearse?
Well, it depends on the project.
Let's talk about The Crown then. Just start there.
The Crown, we rehearsed barely at all. We
Okay.
had a 10-day long prep period, but it was sitting around and talking deeply about the history, guided by Stephen Daldry. He just had this incredible trust in the actors, and he knew who he was casting, this big, extraordinary cast of actors who brought so much experience, who came to the process having already read books about their characters.
Which, especially in the case of Sir Winston, there is
I'd read my
legions,
books. Of
legions
course, I
and
was
legions.
terrified joining ranks with all of them.
Now, what was it like? You know, your career started almost 50 years ago. 1972 was your first major
Yeah,
role.
my Broadway debut was 73. I'd done regional theater
Yeah.
before then.
I want to go back to my first question then. What made you make that transition? Because, and no disrespect, but based on your background, based on what you did, American repertory theater, which is a wonderful industry, never hear me wrong. I have friends who do it and I'm very, very proud to know them. But it seemed like that's where you would go. That's where you were, that was going to be where you were streamed.
I thought so myself. That was my father's trade. Early on, I imagined that if I did anything beyond just journeyman actor, I would be an actor manager of an American repertory theater.
Sort of like the family business.
And sure enough, my Broadway debut, I never thought I would act on Broadway. It came in a marvelous production from the Long Wharf Theater that came to New York, lock, stock, and barrel, opened in early March 1973, and about 2.5 weeks later, I won a Tony Award for it. I'm sure I have the record for the quickest
Out of the gate.
the quickest sprint between Broadway debut and Tony Award.
Now, what was your thoughts about television? Because television back in the 70s,
there again.
television was very different than what we think of it now.
I just never thought I would do it. I remember a big Hollywood casting director coming to town to talk to me about doing a TV sitcom. This was completely out of my realm of possibility. It just is not something I ever considered doing. And that obtained for quite a while. Third Rock from the Sun came along.
I will if some don't know, we're going to give it a little trivia question. You might be tested on this later. You turned down the role of Fraser Crane.
I did, and I didn't even remember that I'd done it. I mean, that's how little I...
That's very cool, by the way. There's a certain, no disrespect to anyone,
I mean,
but
I tell you, I barely noticed that it had been offered to me. I had never seen Cheers. I mean, what I'm basically admitting to you, Dominic, is what a snob I am. I just didn't ever
we
think...
didn't say that snobby for that long, my friend, because
Well,
you took on an you took on a network sitcom eventually with Third Rock from the Sun.
yeah, I mean, that was an interesting... I did host Saturday Night Live 3 times in the 1980s, and 2 of those 3 times on the writing staff were a married couple of comedy writers, Bonnie and Terry Turner. And they worked with me. They saw me just like a tiger with red meat tear into this wild sketch comedy material. And a few years later, they imagined me and nobody else for the role of Dick Solomon in Third Rock from the Sun. If I hadn't said yes to that, they would not have done.
Now,
Third Rock.
you had kept in touch with them over the years, I
Yeah,
gather.
we'd stayed very good friends.
And for that, were you part of? I mean, the fan base for Third Rock is enormous. It was in the 90s. It remains on streaming and syndication around the world. And I'm sure you get a lot of people who are still like Dick Solomon. But how were you involved in the crafting of that?
Oh yes, I mean, the role of Dick Solomon was ready-made for me. I mean, it was, he was an alien who can do anything, who knows everything, but is completely clueless about human behavior.
Which, AKA great television.
Yeah, and a role tailor-made for a character actor, because it gave me an opportunity to try out absolutely everything, trying to figure out how to be a good human, which is what all of us are doing all the time. But that meant that I was a marvelous dancer. I could sing. I could dance. Anything came easily to me except understanding human beings. And of course, I was very involved in the casting process, a wonderful period of time in which we basically figured out who Harry, who Sally, who Tommy really are. And in came Joe Gordon-Levitt, we understood. In came French Stewart, that's Harry. In came Kristen Johnston, what a discovery. It was a wonderful process.
Now,
and it just didn't stop for 6 years.
But part of that, you talked about earlier about, revealing that you were maybe a little bit of a snob about television. Was that friendship with the SNL gang? Is that kind of what put the thaw on that?
That's how it's happened. To tell you the truth, they kind of ambushed me. They told my agent that they were in town and they wanted to have breakfast with me. And I thought, oh, how fun. I can't wait to see Bonnie and Terry. And I arrived at the Four Seasons to have breakfast with them. And there were Bonnie and Terry and Tom Werner and Marcy Carsey and Karen Mandabach, the brass of Carsey Werner. And I sat down and thought, oh great, I've been ambushed.
Where's the escape exit?
Yeah, well, especially when they asked Terry to explain the premise of the show. And he began, well, it's about these 4 aliens. And I thought, oh my God, how am I going to be polite and get out of here as quickly and efficiently as possible? And Terry continued, and after about 5 minutes, I was in. I mean, what I just told you about Dick Solomon, it exploded inside my brain. What a brilliant idea for a sitcom this was. And satirical in so many ways, hilariously funny in the mode of a high energy kind of Fawlty Towers English comedy series, but also with tremendous feeling.
And range, as you said, because you can do anything.
Absolutely anything. Not only that, I was sitting with all these marvelous people and thinking, why have I been resisting this? This looks like so much fun. And it was at a time in my life I had spooled out about 3 or 4 sadistic villains in Ricochet and Cliffhanger, and I thought it's time for a change. I'm quickly turning into Basil Rathbone here. So this just came at the right moment. And also my kids, we were in middle school. I realized, wow, if this ran for a few years, I could be home. I could be observing banker's hours on a work schedule in Burbank for the next 5 or 6 years. And I did.
Not bad.
It was just the most wonderful period. And we did 138 episodes. I'm sure I'll live an extra 10 years just from the fuel that you get from all that laughter.
Well, having said all that, wonderful to hear your recollections of Third Rock from the Sun. But let's make sure you're really telling it how it is. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Jane Curtin joining us. Jane?
Hi, Janie.
Hi, John. How are you?
This is the greatest.
Happy celebration of John Day.
Exactly.
Well, I consider it a celebration of Jane and John Day. We're only about a mile from where we shot all of Third Rock.
It wasn't a wonderful time. It was a joyous time.
Oh.
It was a time when you'd walk into that studio and you would be prepared to laugh all day long. And you always had a skip in your step when you were going from your dressing room to the studio and then back to your dressing room. And sometimes if you didn't have that much to do, Simbi Kali and Wayne Knight and I would steal golf carts and we'd go to other sets and go to their craft service and check out what they had to eat. But it was wonderful. It was like our studio. We ruled that roost. I mean, they would salute us practically when we would drive in the morning because everybody was so happy.
Now, obviously, the show ran from 1996 to 2001. It is one of those shows that never dies because of streaming and because of syndication. And people always said, I've made fun of John, that people probably still stop him in the street and say Dick Solomon. What does Dr. Mary Albright mean for you now as the years have passed since that show was on the air?
Oh, I've been pretty fortunate in the sense that most of the series that I have done have been age appropriate. And Mary was age appropriate. I mean, Mary was this cougar, and it was a wonderful character to play, and of course I had the most perfect co-pilot. I mean, there were times when John and I would be attached by pantyhose in a library and just laughing and laughing and laughing. And come on, that's not a job. That's not a job.
Ow! Oh, Mary, I made it. You can come on, repel. You are such a fool! Need I remind you that it was this fool who suggested that we use your pantyhose as a lifeline? Let's just get out of here. Oh, mother of pearl! Don't lose hope, Mary. If you cry, I'll cry, and who will stop me from crying? Oh, don't try to hug me! God, there's a big dead spider in your hair. No. I tell a lie. He's still alive.
And we were the alter egos of Bonnie and Terry. They so understood our comedy, and we so understood theirs.
Absolutely.
You combine
absolutely.
Dick Solomon and Mary Albright, that is John and Jane. You know, my insanity and her stern groundedness. She so understood what was so funny about that, and it also rooted it in reality.
Well, I mean, I remember when I would watch it, it would always remind me kind of the title, which is like, I felt like you orbited around Mary.
Yeah.
And that was where, it was that
That's right.
trajectory in which the comedy would develop.
And you know, I went back and every year or so, I go back and go on a like 2 or 3 episode binge, just down memory lane. I've forgotten about 75% of what we did. I thought it was all completely brilliant. Turns out I only remember 1/4 of it. It was all brilliant. And it is so funny even now. And I mean, the fact that we can make ourselves laugh just watching it.
Oh
and
my
all
God,
these
yeah. And
memories come back.
I actually watched some Third Rocks the other morning when I was working out, because I have a rowing machine and I like to watch TV. And
As
I
one
hadn't
should.
done that as one should. And I hadn't done it in a long time. And I was laughing so hard.
This is just so
And I
great.
remembered the show, John, where you were a model, you were a life model
Yes.
in an art class.
Yep.
And you told me that every time you get naked, you get a prize.
That's right. Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah, that's
He
why I look
does.
for every opportunity.
Jane, thank you so much for joining us
This
today.
is all.
Oh, my pleasure.
Janie.
Well,
Congratulations,
you need to talk to your
John.
agents and get a
Okay,
reunion special
all right.
going. It's the currency of the realm.
This is the most wonderful woman. We just had
Ah.
such fun. Anyway, thank you for taking your
Okay.
time, and thank you for
I-
placing my one of my poetry books right behind you in your library. Yes, she's no fool either. Bye-bye, Jane.
Product placement. Goodbye, John.
Right.
Take care.
Well, thank you, Jane, for joining us. That was amazing. Thank you so much. Now, I want to shift a little bit. Bunch of Emmys for Third Rock from the Sun. Then you decide to play a family man who's secretly a serial killer.
Yes.
Little different with Arthur Mitchell. No, I mean, I suppose Arthur Mitchell, if there's a through line in your career, it's men with secrets. Kind of.
Yeah.
In this case, definitely. In this case, definitely.
I would say that my favorite word is duality. I love the two sides of a single spirit. That's why, you know, people with inner conflict. I mean, that's where just about all drama comes from, and comedy. And of course, Dexter is a man with two toys, like the dark side of the moon.
Well, I mean, people can talk Dexter all day long. I mean, there's a million ways to it. But the thing that always intrigued me about Arthur, and I want to ask you if this maybe this is only me who sees that. The thing that amazed me about Arthur is he out serial killered Dexter.
Yeah.
You know, it almost was competition.
Well, it was like the device in Silence of the Lambs with Hannibal Lecter and that freak in the basement.
Yeah.
It's like the interaction of two people who share these crazed compulsions. To me, speaking of duality, I mean, what was fascinating about the Trinity killer, Arthur Mitchell, I felt he was in the grips of a compulsion which he deeply wished he did not have.
Interesting.
And was tortured by it. Felt the need to do something that he desperately did not want to do, but had to do. And he even wanted to be caught. He wanted someone to stop him. And he had this overriding sort of brilliance. It was an intensely creepy character for
Now,
that reason.
for
And I
that-
say there were two sides of him tugging against each other.
But when you go into playing a character like that, for you, do you research that character? I mean, you know, in this particular case, kind of grisly. Like, there's no nice version of that.
You know, it was offered to me and pitched to me, and I took it, and I was on the set all in the space of 5 or 6 days. I mean, these things happen fast. Probably means it was offered to 3 or 4 people before me. But, you know, they had done the research. They knew all about these terrifying people who pretended to become not only very normal but very banal.
Well, that is part of, I think, the brilliance of Dexter overall. But specifically, when the Trinity Killer and Arthur Mitchell was on, you won another Emmy for that.
Yeah.
Now, this is the TV Academy, so we're gonna, you know, let's talk among our tribe, so to speak. What is that like? You know, you've won a lot of Emmys, man. Like, you're gonna, couple of years, you might be the record. You might be the gold standard.
It gets harder to win as the years go on.
No, not with the roles you're picking, Perry Mason. Just saying.
Well,
like, just saying. But what is that like? So that was your 4th Emmy, correct?
Yes.
What
Wait
at
a
that?
minute, I think must have been my 5th. I've lost track.
I think I've lost track too. Let's just say it was another place on the trophy shelf. Right?
Yes.
So to that,
I must say in the storage bin. But yes.
that's inside thoughts, outside thoughts. But let's be like, what at that point in your career, what does that feel like?
Oh, it's always extraordinary. I mean, there's no rush like it. You know, I'm an actor. You win an award and you're brought up to the stage and everybody's applauding. I won a SAG award for The Crown and I got a standing ovation from my peers. It was an extraordinary thrill. I don't take any of that in my stride nor for granted.
Now, thank you for the natural born segue, The Crown. Mm-hmm. You've played more than one president in your career. Winston Churchill is, as Gary Oldman and many, many other people can tell us, that's kind of the Mount Everest when you're going to play political leaders. Mm-hmm. If you're going to play one of the good ones, put it that way, right? You won the Emmy for Assassins, but let's be honest, the Great Fog episode was also a tour de force as well. An amazing episode. It's playing a leader who's trying to fight the dimming of the light. Mm-hmm. And that's very much what your Winston Churchill was about.
Yeah.
Give us a sense of that. I mean, also because you're an American playing Winston Churchill.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I mean, let's be honest, there were a few people who kind of jumped up a little bit about that.
Yes. I had told my friend Nick Heitner, the director of the National Theatre, that I was coming over to London to act in The Crown, and his answer was by email, for what role? If it's Churchill, you better watch out because you'll have a contract out on you from every major actor in London. Mm-hmm. And when I told him, yes, it's Churchill, his answer was, they'll kill you. You know.
And now, how did that make you feel?
Well, I was
joking
very
aside.
excited. Stephen Daldry and Peter Morgan had, in their wisdom, entrusted me with this role, so I had to have a little faith in them. But I was definitely scared and intimidated. It was, as you say, it's one of those Everest proportion roles. But as soon as I got there, I was welcomed so warmly by all these fantastic actors. They had more confidence in me than I had in myself. truly.
Do you think, though? Do you think a little bit of that anxiety is kind of what juiced you for the role? A
Oh,
little
of
bit?
course. It's always
because when you
It-
say that, that makes me think of the theater John Lithgow. That's the rush of the floodlight.
It's axiomatic. If you're scared to do it, you will end up doing your best work. I mean, because other people have ideas for you and aspirations for you that you don't even dare have for yourself. When I accepted the SAG Award, I said to my peers, I never would have cast myself in this role. It's a matter of trusting other people to come up with bright ideas for you.
And in talking about trust, one of the core of that first season of The Crown, in many ways, is the relationship between you and the newly crowned Elizabeth II,
Yes.
Claire Foy. And in fact, I would say, in many ways, that actually sets a trajectory that you see throughout the entire series of her relationships with her prime ministers, male and female.
In fact, the series is based on the audience, Peter Morgan's play, in which there are about 8 different prime ministers that come.
And she's seen them all off in one way or the other.
Yeah.
But Sir Winston was the one who was he was the lion. And I'm not talking about the Lion in Winter, because he was her father's prime minister, and of course the Queen worshipped her father, worships, present tense, King George. For you, I know you'd never worked with Claire before, so what was that like? Because everything revolved around that working.
Yeah, I had not.
I'm not trying to overplay it, but I think you know what I mean.
I had not worked with Claire. I'd never met Claire. I had seen her in Little Dorrit, a wonderful series. But I had, and in the Hilary Mantel TV series.
Oh, the one, Oliver Cromwell one.
Yeah.
Which neither of us can remember the name of.
She played
But it was fabulous.
And she played Anne Boleyn in that. And I knew she was a marvelous actress, but I also knew actors who had worked with them. Good friends of mine who said, she is lovely. That was the word I heard about 12 times. And she is completely lovely. And a genuine and giving actress. No, it was a dream, not just for me, but for the whole group. It was one of those star-kissed jobs where the person playing the essential role set the tone for absolutely everybody, and that was Claire.
One thing I learned about that, my family is everyone in my family except for me and my brother are British, born in England. My grandmother, she has over the years told the story of that year of the fog, and the devastation that it brought. And for instance, in one case, you see it in The Crown. One of Churchill's assistants literally gets hit by a bus because the bus can't see her and she can't see it coming, and the way it took over like a dark mist. Your performance there, that mixture of fact and fiction, found this beautiful place where you found it was almost if you took the mythology away from Churchill, and there was this man encountering the world, nature. It became. I'm not trying to overplay it, but there is a little bit King Arthur playing out there.
Well, I will accept your praise, and I will appreciate the compliment, but it's all Peter Morgan. I mean, his whole brilliant idea was to humanize these people whom we only know as icons. And Churchill, talk about duality. This is a man who defeated Hitler and yet is a man of tremendous insecurity. A man who was a hopeless failure as a child and as a teenager and even in his 20s.
Even his early political career.
And desperately trying all through his career to compensate for his own sense of inadequacy, spoon-fed to him by his parents. And it was fascinating to learn all that about Churchill, to learn that this person, whom everybody refers to as the Lion, is in fact a pussycat.
Well, and in some of the ways you play that, because the insecurity with the portrait, the insecurity with his place, with political heirs trying to kind of push him off the stage a little faster than he wants to go.
Yeah, the fact that you read about him and you read that he has this white-hot temper, a lot of it fueled by alcohol.
A lot of it fueled by alcohol.
And how does Peter Morgan choose to demonstrate Churchill's anger? The one time when you see him in a rage in all those 10 episodes is because he hates the portrait of himself, because it reveals the truth of him, that he's old and he's bitter and he's and there is a desperation there. All these things,
You know, it's funny,
turn
you-
him into a raging, and he directs all that rage at the artist whom he has befriended over the course of sitting.
But
for
it's
him.
so funny as you say that. You become him.
Well,
you become that. You
listen,
become that.
This is what you do. At the best of times, as an actor, you find what it is there in yourself, which completely connects with what you find in the character. And you know, I'm approaching the age that Churchill was at when I played him. And it's not a fun thing facing old age and realizing you're losing your viability in these ways. It's a terrifying thing. And you know, Joe Biden was elected president at 78. Churchill became prime minister at 80. This is not an easy thing.
No. No.
You know, to deal with other people's doubts and skepticisms, and to know you're going to have to overcome that.
Do you, and please don't take this the wrong way, but you brought it up. Do you think about that now in these years of your career? Do you think about limitations as opposed to ambitions?
Of course. I mean, my current job is a series no one has seen yet called The Old Man for FX. It will someday be a wonderful series, wonderful. It's me and Jeff Bridges as two old men. And it was suspended for 8 months because of the pandemic. And it's been suspended for the last 8 months because of Jeff's illness. And in that time, I've managed to dodge COVID, but I've had 2 or 3 other assaults on my health since January that only come with old age. Of course you think about that.
What do you think of in terms of your because I look at you and I see your career as simply jumping from one height to another. You know, we talked about The Crown. You talked about the Screen Actors Guild Award. You won another Emmy. You know, there was the widespread acclaim. There was a little bit of people talked about you snatching victory from where certain defeat looked of like, oh, this Yank is going to go over and play Churchill. Gary Oldman's just won an Oscar. There's no way this is going to work out, right? And it did. You found him, you know, and that's the hard thing, to, especially with larger than life figures, I think, to find them, because it's easy to do a caricature. It's very hard to do a character. And then we see you in HBO's Perry Mason, which was a little bit of a shock therapy in a way, because I'm just old enough to know Perry Mason, and that didn't seem like my Perry Mason. And then you get, this is a prequel of sorts. This is the history of this man who became this television icon and became so well known to us. You play another man, older man, another man full of insecurities, full of his own bravado, and having to acknowledge some of the limitations. And he is Hollywood attorney, almost slash fixer, E.B. Jonathan. You don't make it to the end of the first season, my friend. So, to that effect, when you were offered this job, they said to you, so here's the deal. Big series, Matthew Rhys, Americans alum, you, Perry Mason, iconic, a whole bunch of stuff. You're only going to make it halfway through, pal. How do you do, I mean, to you, do you go, yeah, I'm not going to do that?
Oh, no, of course not. There were so many great elements in place. It was HBO. It wasn't television, it was HBO. It was Matthew. Look, my agent told me it's an 8-episode season and you're only in the first 4 episodes. And I thought, well, that must mean I have a fabulous exit. Let's see what the reason is. And I read those 4 episodes. This was written by Roland Jones and Ron Fitzgerald. Remember those names? Just fantastic writers. It was such a brilliant conceit to take everything that people remember as a 50s and 60s lawyer TV series and take it back into the world of Earl Stanley Gardner, and the man who wrote Perry Mason and all the Perry Mason stories in the early 1930s Los Angeles, that wonderful, rich era.
Day of the Locust, my friend.
Yeah. And to just yank it out and yank all those expectations away and create this whole new world and create Perry Mason, make it into an origin story. to have an origin story, you sort of need, for Perry Mason to become an attorney, you have to see the reason. And the reason was he had to replace somebody else who was botching an essential job. And they made it a fascinating character and a fascinating relationship, because this man was Perry's mentor, his childhood hero.
Mentor / substitute father. I mean,
Yeah,
that was
exactly.
a very, very deep,
They had
and that
known
deep
each-
connection
They had known
evolved.
each other since Perry Mason was a boy. So all these different currents, and I read it, and I realized this is a fading lawyer who's desperate to make one big score, or he's done for, and he ends up with this gold mine of a case that is a public sensation, and bit by bit, he's blowing it.
Yeah.
And it's destroying him, and it does destroy him, but it's the making of Perry Mason. Now that arc and that idea was writing genius. And along comes Tim Van Patten, who's just about as good as you can get.
Not related to me.
No, although it's spelled the same. Right?
Exactly the same.
And have you met Tim Patton?
I have met his
You actually look rather like him.
Well, I mean, DNA can tell you everything, my friend.
But Tim he created that world.
Yeah.
He was a perfect,
Which was a stunning looking world.
oh
by
my
the way.
God,
Stunning
and a
looking.
perfect collaborator with these two guys. It's brilliantly cast. And these guys created like the enormous cast of characters of a 1930s noir crime film. It's just delicious.
Well, we've had Jane Curtin, and so in all fairness, if you're going to praise one of your co-stars, we will have them joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Matthew Rhys is joining us.
Matthew,
Mr. Lithgow!
have you seen The White Whale?
A white whale! Hang on one second.
You look magnificent.
Thank you. It's all fake. It takes hours to put on.
I was going to ask you if you'd started shooting the second season of Perry Mason, but obviously you have not.
Oh no! Don't spoiler alert.
Well, that's
Perry,
right. That's right.
If the origin story was what it was, look where this could go.
He's become a hermit.
Exactly.
It's called Harry Mason.
Yes, exactly. Matthew, thank you for joining us today. We were speaking about the show and particularly about the relationship between Perry and EB, and how over those initial 4 episodes and then later into the season we learn more and more about it. It was so wonderful to watch this mentor relationship. I wanted to get a sense from you, what was that experience like working with John as you guys developed those characters and you became, as a sense, the son became the father?
I think any person who's worked with John will attest to this, that John Lithgow is not only the person you'd want as a father on screen, but in real life also. And it was the transition of kind of him being the mentor to Mason, or more so playing that, was incredibly easy for me, because I'm quite certain I've never met more of a Renaissance man ever before, or will again. Because every time he stepped on set and told us what he was up to, what he'd done, what he was about to do, what volume of poetry he was releasing, or what watercolor he was working on, my awe of him grew and grew. And therefore to pretend, no, I didn't have to pretend, to merely allow this mentor role to evolve, all I had to do was stand in awe of John Lithgow.
Well, and I know this for a fact, not only did you stand in awe, you brought the man freshly hatched eggs at one point.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
That pales into tsunamic. Hang on, I'm being interrupted by a small person. Give me 2 seconds. Hang on, please. So, the eggs pale into true insignificance when Mr. Lithgow, sadly, in season 1, the 5th episode, departed. He left everyone with a personalized watercolor of their character. So I think bringing in a dozen eggs from somebody else's chickens doesn't even compare as to the greatest rap gift I've ever seen in my burgeoning career.
Matthew, oh, well, I have to tell you, it was the first I ever met you was with a basket of eggs being distributed to the entire makeup and hair staff. And I instantly thought, this is the most generous actor I've ever met.
Well, now to talk about that, generous is a term that actors often use to describe working with other people, and you sometimes worry if it's an oversimplification or it's just a cliche of friendliness. But between the two of you, watching the relationship and watching the trauma that Perry was going through as he's trying to find the person he becomes, and to some extent, E.B. leading him to that way, stumbling him to that way, sadly to say. Matthew, for you, what was the process like at which the two of you worked on this? Was there a lot of rehearsal? Was there a lot of discussion about how these characters were going to interact? Because for those first 4 episodes directly, that is the core relationship, and the legacy continues to the end of the season, and I'm sure into further seasons.
Yes, very much so. No, I think John will attest to this, that television at this day and age is almost based entirely on instinct, and rehearsal time is nigh on invisible these days. And so what you go in as prepared as possible, and you wish to your god or gods that the planets will align and the person you're put in front of, you'll have, I'm always wary of the word chemistry, but you just hope that they'll, hit the ball back over the net, in the same way you hopefully will serve, or forehand or volley. I don't even play tennis. I don't know why I'm using.
I know a lot of tennis analogies here. Big metaphors.
Yeah,
big metaphors.
But I'm so sorry.
I love the.
This is the best part. I know.
I love the supporting player.
I know. Off stage too. A Greek chorus we never see.
And also,
I know.
and we are leaving out Tim Van Patten, who completely trusted the actors to find it. This was an actor who spoke very rarely about what you should do differently. But whenever he said anything, it was something that was so to the point, and an actor can use it instantly. And he created this wonderful atmosphere
As a director,
and cast the thing beautifully. And the leading player was Matthew, who, like Claire Foy, as I just spoke about in The Crown, just sort of cast this wonderful spell of fun. It was one of the more fun jobs I've ever done.
See, I got to tell you, watching Perry Mason, fun is not the word you hear.
That's what
that's the thing, and I guess that's a great testament to the
Matthew
abilities.
played it with enormous gravity, but as soon as someone said cut, he was Matthew again, who is the funniest, most delightful man. There was a certain point at which we discovered in all of Hollywood, if not the United States, we're the only 2 actors who know a certain song from Beggar's Opera. And we began to sing that together every time for the rest of the crew.
I really hope there's a blooper reel of this somewhere. There has to be. The two of you sing. I think
very much should be. Very much should be.
I think depending on how the award season goes, there is an FYC of the two of you with microphones karaokeing that thing.
Road. I can hear the sound of horses. The hour of attack approaches. Your arms, brave boys, and rope. We sang the entire song.
Clearly, they're already giving you guys the awards. This is cleaning up right here. Matthew, we're so pleased you came to join us, and we very much appreciate the off-camera participation as well.
Yes.
I say this as a father of a 3-year-old myself, and trust me, she's shown up on many a Zoom the past year. Going into season 2, what do you see, no spoilers clearly, but what do you see as the legacy of EB for Perry Mason, the series?
There's no legacy. I'm pushing hard that there's a long-lost twin that makes his way to called BB, Jonathan.
That's right.
Well, that's
Because
even more reason to watch season 2. Clearly.
Yeah, well, the thought of a second season without Mr. Lithgow is a sad thought indeed. But as you referenced earlier, what he set up in the first season is EB was such an enormous foundation to who Perry was and is and will become, that at least to that degree, I'm glad we will honor the legacy.
Now, let me ask you about that then, in specifics. Is there, for both of you, was there a particular scene, a particular interaction between the two characters that really landed for the two of you, where you felt like that was the moment. That was when this hit hard.
Well, to me, the entire 4-episode arc was leading up to the last 20 minutes or so of the 4th. And there's a beautiful scene where E.B. is truly defeated. He knows he's not gonna get through this. And he's drunk, and he's wakened up from a horrible night of just sort of torturing himself. And that's where you see their roles change. And his feet are killing him because he went to sleep without taking his shoes off. And he asks Perry to take off his shoes. To me, that's a kind of biblical moment. I just found it, I say that with all objectivity. I thought that was a beautiful moment in a wonderful scene. And it's all because of Matthew. And I reached down and I just put my hand on top of his head. It was just an impulse that happened in the middle of a take. And suddenly you saw the tenderness and the hurt. It was all there. It was wonderful for both characters.
My feet swell at night. Hurts like a hemorrhoid.
I wouldn't know.
You will. You will, goddamn know.
Got it.
You'll wake up with a nose hair the length of your arm, half your friends in the cemetery, a million strangers in the street. Can you get just...
Yeah, sure.
How old were you when we first met?
How old were you?
I was still in the office on Winston Street, between a blacksmith and a saddlery.
That's a growing business.
Your father showed up in the most clapped-out buckboard I'd ever seen. A nag that looked like death should be riding it.
Yeah, Pa could be rough on the horses.
A fence line dispute. All he had was a few scraps of paper and a copy of what he thought was a land grant from the King of Spain. His son beside him on the seat.
He wanted me to see what a man who worked behind a desk looked like.
Matthew, would that be the same scene for you, or is there another that comes to mind?
No, I would agree that was the moment where John put his hand on my head. I thought was it was beautiful, but also it bookended a very early scene for the two when E.B. comes to see Mason, and Mason's hungover, and we see what the relationship is, and E.B. says, I need your help. And as John said in that scene, that final scene where he says the roles are reversed, it was this tragedy. But there was a couple of scenes. There was a scene where we're both in the club together, and there was another scene where I talk about the first time I saw E.B. Jonathan, that my father said, I wanted you to see what a man in a suit looks like, or a man who worked in an office looks like. There were several, and what was so, I suppose, reassuring from a selfish point of view, but instantly exciting was the very first second I felt that we started playing. It was there immediately, and that was it's joyous when that happens.
Well, it certainly showed up on the screen. Thank you, Matthew, so much for joining us today.
This is a wonderful man. You take care of yourself.
Following in your footsteps, Mr. Little.
But John, not everyone could join us today, but a few wanted to send you some very special messages. Let's take a look.
Hi, John. Charlize here. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy you're being celebrated. You need to be celebrated every single day. Thank you for being such an amazing talent and for everything that you bring to our industry. And thank you for sharing that with me personally when we got to work together. You know I absolutely love you. I respect you. I adore you. I'm in awe of you. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for everything that you've given all of us. And you've raised that bar really high as an actor and as a performer. And we are all just trying to keep up with you. So I'm sending so much love. I'm so proud of you. I miss you. And I miss working with you. So let's figure it out. Let's find that next job together. I hope that you're well and I'm sending you a big heart. Bye.
Well, you've opened a can of worms. I don't know how I'm going to begin this without never wanting to stop talking about this person. Probably the luckiest person in the entire world to have been in the position that I was in as a young actor, getting a big break in a Broadway show, my Broadway debut. But I learned in this process what class really is, what it means to care for other actors in the production that you're in, and how to lead a company. And that came from John. Well, he would give me notes. And he always hastened to ask me to give him notes in return. That was part of our deal that he made, and that made him so kind of special in this relationship that I had with him, which was that he would come to my dressing room and say, I have a couple of suggestions for you. And then he'd say, and I want you to tell me anything that you have for me. He did this to make the playing field even, but he also did it to make me feel like I had agency in our relationship as actors. He did it for all the right reasons. And I'm incredibly grateful to him for having the patience and the wisdom, the intelligence, the talent, the class that put all of those things together and allowed me to be who I was and allowed me to blossom in the part as well as I was able to, as much as I was able to. But he's really, really high on my list of people that I'm extremely grateful to for all of the things that I enjoy today in my career.
Hi, I had the good fortune of working with John several years ago, and I count it among the highlights of not just my career, but my life. He is a giant. He's very tall. But along with his formidable intellect and talent as an actor, what I think I will remember the most fondly and have tried to take with me is his infectious sense of enthusiasm and sense of play. The darker the scenes we were simulating, the more we would be likely to get into giggle fits when we were finished. It was all a deep sense of play, and I will always cherish the memory of that, and I try to bring it to what I do to this day. Thanks, John.
One of the things I find fascinating about having a conversation with you is, and I mentioned it before, is the scope and the breadth and the depth of your career. And careers have phases. And we all know politicians are the best example. The last phase often isn't the pretty one. Most people don't know when to leave. Most people don't know how to leave. You seem to have evolved into a perfect stage in this career because the honors are there, I mean, just on paper and on the trophy shelf, but also you seem to be in a place where you're finding that place for yourself. As you said, the booster rocket.
Well, look, I'm a character actor, and it comes in handy. Old age is a good thing for a character actor because the roles are so fascinating, and people think of you quick for them because there's not that much competition. There aren't many people my age who can still remember their lines. I myself can't remember a lot of them. But I have theatrical chops too, and I think, listen, it's wonderful for you to puff me up like this, but I have just as many insecurities as any actor. So much of my longevity comes out of pure fear of what's going to come next. I have tried to stay creative my whole career. If I don't have anything immediately in the offing, I create something for myself, very often things that have nothing to do with acting. This is how I ended up being a children's book writer and a children's book entertainer.
Very good one.
With symphony orchestras backing me up at Carnegie Hall. I'm about to submit the third in my trilogy of satirical verse on the subject of our former president with my own illustrations.
Really?
Yeah, the Dumpty cycle.
Wow.
So, you know, And I do that out of pure fear that
So
nobody
what-
will
so
hire
what-
me
so-
to act.
Well, I was gonna ask you. I mean, because I really do appreciate. I'm not puffing you up. I'm a great admirer.
No,
of yours.
it's-
but part of what I admire about you is as an actor and now as a man is vulnerability, because I think vulnerability is often the sunlight of truth in many ways. So to that, when you talk about fear, how does that manifest for you? Is it when you step onto the set? Is it when you're picking up the script? Is it where does it actually show up, the anxiety?
Well, it's so interesting because it's always married to excitement. It's always married to creative excitement, at least at the best of times. I mean, it's pretty rare when you literally fear that you can't do this job at all. Your fear is that you can't do it as well as you'd hoped, or you can't do it as well as somebody else. The worst fear or the worst disappointment in the business is saying no to something that some other actor goes off and has a huge triumph, and you said no because you were afraid to do it. I mean, that's a fear of its own.
So to look at that, when you look at your career and you look at the years of it, and you look at those insecurities now, that energizing now, besides the factor of age, how is that different from when you were a younger actor? Because as you said earlier, like you went on Broadway and boom, got a Tony, you
Yeah.
smoked a cigarette and suddenly had a Tony.
It just never stops, Dominic. There are waves of insecurity and arrogance. You know, it's a kind of pendulum swing for actors. It never stops. And
Do you sometimes wish that the binary nature of it would stop?
not really. I mean, look, I'm not kidding myself. I'm 75 and I'm still a very castable actor. I'm one of the very lucky few. And I've had a wonderful, fascinating career that ain't over yet. I'm very aware of how lucky I am and how much I have to be thankful for. It's just that you can't help feeling anxiety about what comes next, envy for certain actors who are getting what you wish you could get. You can't help it. It's all part of the mix. That's why I always say to young people, find something in your life that's more important to you than acting and pursue that, something that depends on nobody but yourself. It doesn't depend on somebody else wanting you.
What was that thing for you?
Oh, listen, I wanted to be an artist before I wanted to be an actor. And I pretty much abandoned it when I became an actor, but I still feel a creative rush. I still paint. I still write. And I entertain children.
Very well, actually.
And these are just things that they keep you creatively alert. And along comes some delightful phone call when you're asked to play Roger Ailes in Bombshell. You're asked to do Churchill in The Crown. You're suddenly, I could tell you a couple of things that I have coming along, but I won't.
We will all learn about that on Deadline sooner or later, my friend.
Yes, you'll be the first.
Yes. What do you say to an industry that looks at an actor like you? What do you say to them? Do you say, hey, open for business still? Or do you say, just put me here and not there? Where do you want to be now?
No, I always want work. And I always want great roles. I guess I would just say, don't forget about me.
That's not going to happen.
It is something you do have to embrace as an actor. And that is, people do forget. What you do is, it's engineered to go off like a firecracker right now. And you think because it's film or because it's TV, it's there forever. It's not. I would say I could rattle off about 20 of my favorite roles and favorite jobs before I was 40 years old. And you will never have even heard of them, let alone remember them. It's just in the nature of things, and an actor's got to embrace that. You can't just live on your memories. You have to always want to do more. And one of the great things about growing old, I've sort of referred to this, is there are fantastic roles for old people. I finally got to play King Lear in 2014. I may well indeed be too old to play it already. It's the things that men and women deal with as they reach their 70s and 80s, let alone their 90s. These are big elemental thoughts. You've lived a long life. You have a lot to look back on. You have a lot of fears about what's coming. This is the stuff that wonderful drama is made out of, and even wonderful comedy.
Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you.
I agree, and conversation is the word.
Thank you so
Dominic.
much. Thank you for joining us today, all of you. As I said at the beginning, and I hope everyone agreed, it has truly been a pleasure. Thank you. Goodbye from myself and the Television Academy, and I guess as they say, we'll see you on the small screen.